Emotions Matter. Brought to you by emaw.com. That's EMAWW.com. Your solution for emotional intelligence. Welcome to the Emotions Matter podcast. I'm pleased to have today as our guest, Miss Kerry Wekelo. Kerry is the founder and visionary of Zendaway, where she shares with you her life experiences with wellness. Though Zendaway is her passion, she also supports other organizations, hence her self-proclaimed title, Jill of all trades. Kerry serves as the Director of Human Resources and Operations for Actualized Consulting, in which she spearheaded and runs a successful wellness program. After years of personal exploration, Kerry has discovered that focusing on overall wellness replenishes energy, creates healthier relationships, and provides excellent insight into life. It has become her passion to help share this with others. Kerry's trademark program, Enhancing Your Day, teaches some of the nation's top executives on how breath and movement throughout the day improves relaxation and creates deeper levels of awareness. In addition to wellness and leadership articles, Kerry has also authored Audrey's Journey, a children's book series focused on living with compassion and joy. She also has a Pile of Smile activity book, which she gives away for free to children who are undergoing treatment. And of course, her award-winning book, If It Does Not Grow, Say No, which teaches kids about having fun with nutrition. And now, I'd like to welcome our guest, Miss Kerry Wekelo. Welcome, Kerry.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We're thrilled to have you today. There's so much information we'd love for you to share with us today. The first question I have is, you have a lot of interests in your life and you're involved in a number of activities. Is there any one of these activities that you would like to maybe give us a little bit more insight on that you are particularly proud of?
Yes, I would. The one thing that's a bit newer is I developed 11 different cubes. So they're like they're a stress ball material, but they're cubes, and that each of the 6 sides have different prompts. And I initially developed them. The idea came from, I wanted to get breathing into my kids' school. And so I was like, well, if I donate the cubes, that would be a very easy, accessible way to have the kids have these cubes in their classrooms so they could pause and take a breath in more challenging scenarios. And then once I did the breathing, then just additional ideas kept coming to me. So like, for instance, I have one that is the daily principles that I believe everybody should be, how are you breathing each day? Are you nourishing your body? Are you moving? How are you communicating? How are you dealing with your daily challenges? So I'm really excited about the cubes and that idea because I've never developed an actual product before. So that's what I'm proud of right now.
What does the cube actually look like? Is it the size of a stress ball?
It is.
The child can just literally hold it in their hand and squeeze it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I have all of them on my desk, and they're very good reminders as well. So typically I might have, for instance, how am I dealing with a challenge? And that side says, notice your current emotions, pause and allow what you are feeling, and then pause to pivot to a positive possibility. So just little reminders. So they are used for kids, but then also up to a corporate level, as well as counselors and therapists have also been using them quite a bit in their practices.
So it's like a physical app. It is. It's a physical app.
I've been told I need to have an app, but I'm holding strong on the physical.
Yeah, good for you, because we do rely sometimes a lot on technology, and you lose out on that somatic and tactile experience, and connecting with your world and on a more physical level when we always rely on an app, to do it for us. So good for you that you want to stick with that. So they squeeze it, and you said something interesting, and I'm gonna ask you to kind of explain how did they squeeze it, and then they ask themselves what you're feeling at this moment. And when you said something about pivot or how can we turn
Right.
it, what is that?
The daily principles one is really more for, I'd say, an adult, because this is a little bit, you can use it for children for sure. But so on the challenge side, because honestly, we all have challenges that we have to deal with every day. We're all human, right? So what I'm saying on the challenge side, it's notice your current emotions. So that's step number one. Okay, how am I feeling right now? And then pause and just allow. So if you're angry, allow that feeling. If you're happy, allow that feeling too. A lot of times we kind of try to stifle our emotions, whether they be positive or negative. And so I'm a big believer in really allowing yourself to feel the way that you do. And if it's a challenging situation and you might be angry or maybe you're upset with somebody, then you try to pivot that emotion to a more positive possibility. And I also believe that we all have a role in every single situation. So, I used to be blame, blame, blame. And now I'm like, okay, how am I accountable? What is my accountability in this situation?
Have you had any kind of therapy or counseling classes? Because that's beautiful. That's exactly what somebody might hear in a counseling situation. You go to a counselor, everybody's
really
blaming.
Fun. Yeah, I have a minor in psychology, and I've been going to these counselor and therapy conferences to sell the cubes, and everybody thinks I'm a counselor or therapist. No, I just have a minor in psychology. I think I've just been doing so much self-work and on mindfulness and just being super aware really has helped me, and it's been a process for sure.
Now, when you give these, or when you give or somebody buys these cubes from you, does it come with an instruction book? Or, I mean, do you give them a list of emotions? I'm just curious because I sometimes think people may not be able to identify sometimes.
Right.
How
So
they're feeling.
I have, what I've been working on is, as I've been using them, whether it be in a corporate setting, in the classrooms, as counselors have been using them, we've been coming up with different, one-pagers on how you can use the cubes. So that is something that I need to have a little bit more formalized, but I usually, once people buy the cubes, I'll email them different ways based upon how they're going to use them. If they're a parent, I'll send them how I personally have been using them with my kids. If they're a school counselor, how my school counselor friends have been using them.
I could see how helpful this would be. I have some friends who have kids who have autism. Boy, I could really see how that could help their children when they're having, difficulty assessing a situation and becoming emotional or angry. How having something tactile like this, for them to channel their thought and emotions into this object and then sort of let it speak for them can be very valuable.
Absolutely, for sure. And that was just my initial thought, was more at a child setting, and then it just spawned into, adults as well. But yeah, in the school setting that's initially what came to me. Kids passing around this breathing cube. So instead of getting in trouble, take a breath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was my initial vision.
And tell me again, what sparked this creation?
I wanted to get, I wish when I was a kid, somebody would have taught me the importance of breathing and how powerful taking a few breaths. If you just take 5 breaths, you can calm yourself down. It can save you a lot of conflict. So I'm very passionate about teaching breathing to children, and simple breathing, not anything complex. And even the cube is pretty fun. One side even says just to try to smile for a minute. One side is just taking a breath in, and And so very simple, but I wanted to give that tool to the teachers to be able to use in the classroom. And so once I had the idea and I created the cube, I just gave the prototype to the principal and I said, I'd like to donate these to the school.
How many cubes are there?
Total that I have right now, 11. So one led to 11 at the moment.
Can you give us the names of each one, or, what their objective might be?
Sure. So I have breathing. I have my daily principles that we've talked about. I have one that's called play. I have one that is called coping strategies. And actually, my friend who's a school counselor, her and her pyramid of 20 other teachers and school counselors helped me develop that one. I have one that is feelings, one that is questions, yoga poses, because I'm a yoga teacher on the side. My kids actually came up with one that's called stressed out, because my son came to me one day and he's like, your cubes are very positive and I appreciate that. And he's like 8. He was 8 at the time. He's 9 now. And he's like, but people get stressed out and you need to have that on the cube. I was like, oh, you're so smart. You're so smart.
That's great.
So my son and my daughter came up. They're very proud. They have their own, and I even gave them credit on the cube that it was developed by them. So we have a stressed out cube. I have one that is questions, and so like one of the questions is where and how can I be more loving, and that one works very well with kids up to adults. A lot of the therapists are like, this cube is great for like couples counseling. I'm like, oh, good. Awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah.
And then I have one that is on nourishment that goes with one of my books. If it does not grow, say no. And the last one, which is my newest one, is the chakras, which are, the different energy points in your body related to, from that I learned in yoga. But each side also with the chakra, it has a color and also has an affirmation. So for instance, in the center of your stomach, that's your navel. And the affirmation is, I am beautiful and strong. So each side has an affirmation, which was this cube. I was a little bit concerned, like from a therapist perspective, but I just was at a conference last week and it was a big hit. So I was really happy about that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And if somebody would like these cubes, do they go to your website?
They are on the Zendaway website, all 11 of them. And then I also have 4 of them available on Amazon.
And if they get one of the cubes and they're confused or lost, or they need a little bit,
they can contact me.
They can contact you. So that's even better. So they don't have to figure out, they can get some coaching and guidance directly from you. I think that's wonderful. Wow. Sure. Well, I could talk for this whole time just on these cubes. I find them very fascinating.
They're very fun.
They're really fascinating. I think they're a great idea. But I'm going to move on here. You mentioned one of your books, which was "Don't if it doesn't grow, say no." Is that how the title again?
If it does not grow, say no.
Yeah,
correct.
And then you have another book as well called Audrey's Journey, or is that a series?
It's a series.
Can you explain that one a little bit more for us?
Sure. So when my kids were younger and I had started teaching yoga as an after-school program with them, I wanted to have simple ways to teach more about mindfulness to the kids. And so my daughter's name is Audrey. So she has a book, and then my son's name is Blaine, and he has a book. So it was, a lot to give them a memento as well. But for instance, the one is called Loving Kindness, and loving kindness is about, first we have to love ourselves first, and then we can love our family, and then we can give love to all beings. And I think that's a really good lesson to teach kids about loving yourself first and foremost. And so we talk a lot about that in my classes. And so that was why I created that book in particular.
Do you think that not being able to love oneself is the root to a lot of adult issues?
Yes, for sure. And that I had a lot of issues with that that I've had to work through in my adult life. And I think that that's why I'm so passionate about working with kids and giving them the tools and believing in them and just teaching them that. I mean, my son, if when I get flustered, he'll say, "Let's take a breath together." And I'm like, oh
That's
God, he's so right.
great.
I get, I'm like, oh, but he's right. But I mean, I never would have said that to my mom or my dad. I didn't know. I didn't know I could breathe.
Mm.
So I see it in my kids. I mean, they were 3 and 5 when I started going down this path and teaching. And so they've, for the last 6 years, we've been doing yoga as an after school program, and now they can teach class. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's been a beautiful thing to share with them. And I just really focus on the kids. I'll do privates with adults, but I'm just really passionate with the kids and teaching them these tools.
Well, what about us poor adults who didn't have you as a mom and all that? I mean, what kind of advice can you give adults in being able to, number one, identify that maybe that is at the root of some of our issues, that we don't love ourselves, though there is a sense of sometimes being loving oneself and being overconfident. Those aren't the same thing, correct? Or are
Correct.
they? Okay, so
Correct.
how would we define
Typically,
those
if we're
two being differently?
overconfident, we don't love ourselves. In my experience.
Okay.
Because you're covering up. I think for me, I believe, and that's why I like my tagline for Zendaway is enhance your day. And I believe in one step at a time. Because I think what happens is people are like, okay, I'm going to love myself. And they're like, oh man, how do I do that? And I say start simple. I say start each day with doing one thing that you love, doing one thing just for you, because we're busy as adults, parents, when you have families, a lot of, as I know so many people, and I'm dealing with, aging grandparents, aging parents. I mean, we're big caretakers right now in the world. And so many times I hear, my coworkers, my team, my clients that I'm coaching, I don't have time for myself. And I'm busy too, but I make time for myself. And that's where I have more capacity because I am taking accountability for my own personal happiness. And then once you spend time on the things that you love, you get more confident and you start to see your own self-worth.
Give me an example of something that somebody might do for themselves. I know that sounds like a strange question. Like, for example, I like ice cream. So yet if I have a weight problem, right?
That might not be a good choice.
wait a minute. What? Now I can't. Just teasing.
Well, you're talking to somebody who is a recovering ice creamaholic. So yes.
But okay. So that's not what you're saying. You're not saying make yourself happy by doing the things that actually might, in the long run, make you unhappy because, gosh, I'm overweight and I know it's this extra ice cream I'm eating. So give me an example that most people might turn to and as something that would be like for themselves.
Right. I think the easiest place to start is what brings you joy more in a physical sense. So do you, and I when I'm coaching people, I'll go back to, what did you do when you were a kid? How did you have fun with your friends when you were a kid? Did you play games? Did you like to go, out in nature, go hiking? Get creative. Start with more on the play and more on the movement side of the house. Do those types of things for yourself first and foremost.
Yes, now I could see what you mean. Yeah, I know for me personally, I like to walk, and when I do get to walk, I always feel so much more just relaxed and at ease, and just thoughts can come and go. And sometimes being sedentary or even just isolated, in a room, your minds, your thoughts, your stress can sometimes build. And then when you are moving, you're right, it helps relax all of that and makes it a lot more easier to handle everything else that might be coming into your mind when your body is physically a little bit more relaxed. So that's good. Yeah. Oh, well, I thought I might get like approval here on the ice cream bar.
No,
But,
sorry.
oh, well. Okay. All right.
Occasionally. Everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Everything.
Okay. That's good.
That's my motto too. I don't like to say no.
Okay. So here's a good question for you. What do you think makes parents give away so much for their children? What is it? Is it natural instinct? Is it rooted in just the pure love? What is it that makes us want to do so much for our kids? And obviously you've done a lot already for your children, and they have influenced you and inspired you to pursue the things that you've done as an adult. So what do you think, helps parents understand why we do what we do for our kids, so we don't think of it as, is it an obligation? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, of course, love. And, they tell you before you have kids that you're going to love your children like you've never loved anything else. And you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you have kids and you're like, oh, wow, they're right. But then if you look at, so like love is a basic emotion, but if you look at more of our complex emotions, that's where I go to personally as a parent. And that like, I'm in awe of my kids. I'm amazed by how they show up each day, and then bringing in a new life into the world and seeing them progress. And each day is different. And each day they teach me something. So for me, it's this like, I'm just like, wow, what's gonna happen tomorrow? How are they going to show up? What are they going to teach me? So I look at it a little bit different, and it's like this experience for me that I love so much. So that's my perspective on, it's more of complex emotional state versus just that love. It's just deeper emotions that we have. And of course, on the flip side, they are going to annoy you and cause you to be angry. But that's when you can get out one of my cubes and I can try to pivot to a positive emotion. So
That's great.
yeah, sorry, I just tongue twisted that one. But I think it's that contrast, because you love them so much, but they also can make you so angry and get under your skin. So it's, but if you love them so much, then you can pivot out of that and go back to love and go back to positive, fun things with them.
Now, in the workplace, let's talk about how we can apply this in a working environment. How do you get in human resources, for example, how do you help someone at their job that doesn't feel like they're in the present? That doesn't come there with that sort of, I'm in the moment. I'm going to take everything in. I'm going to make this a great teaching day. And rather than I just need to get through this day and get back home. I mean, is there a way you can reach out to make the environment or that employee not feel like they're just punching in and punching out? Means there's something other employees or colleagues can do if they sense that in somebody? How do we bring that, to the workplace? Or is it even necessary to do that?
That's one of the things that I focus on at Actualize Consulting is our culture, and how do we show up each day and be our best and work together, because you're spending the majority of your time at work. So I do believe that it's important to bring those principles into the workplace. And I've been doing that successfully, really focused on it the last 7 years that I've been at Actualize. I've been with them for 12 years, which is crazy. So as I've grown and evolved, I've brought that into the workplace. actually the daily principles cube, I customize that for Actualized Consulting. And so when we have a new hire, we give them a cube. It goes in their computer bag with their computer. And so we really infuse that into the culture. And so when anybody first starts with the organization, one of my first conversations, even in the recruiting process, is we do care about you, and we do want this to be a good experience for you. And you need to take accountability for what's going on, but we also will take accountability. So I make sure that everybody on the team understands that they do have a say in what's going on. And if there are conflicts, which there are challenges on a regular basis, then we bring them to the table and we don't let them fester. And my team jokes, they're like, oh no, like if a team is having conflict, then they joke and they say they have to go to the principal's office, which is, but then afterward, I'm like, I promise I won't bite. And I use a technique where we start out in gratitude. Let's all say something that we're grateful for, people on the team. And then we go to, you know what, is there something that you regret doing in this instance? And then then everybody has an opportunity to say how their feelings were hurt. And so, but when you start with gratitude, and by then they're kind of like, oh, you know what, I'm not really that upset anymore.
Interesting.
So it's worked really well. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to keep everybody on that same page. And you have to lead by example as well. And so, we work on that. And we didn't have, I'm really proud of this, I should say. We didn't have anybody leave the firm last year, which I was super proud of. First year ever. So I think that's a big testament.
What do you think that is? I mean, what was special or different about that past year than other years?
Just how strong we are with our culture, and that people really do feel like we care about them.
So
on an individual basis.
It took a little time.
To
get that through to everyone that we're serious about this.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just a feel-good technique method of the current times, that this really is something that the company wants to emulate and be committed to.
Correct.
Have you ever interviewed somebody and you've told them what you've said here, that, we care about you and we want you, to sort of be of a family? Have you ever encountered someone that you've been interviewing for that position be totally shocked with that, or see something that clicks in their head of like disbelief or joy or release of breath? I mean, that's not a normal thing you would hear on an interview, as part of an interview.
What I'm finding when I've shifted my conversation to that, I pretty much, if I give somebody an offer, they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Because they want that. They might not have known that they wanted it, but after they talk to me and they hear about, how we structure how we do our performance, our performance evaluations, we do them twice a year, but they're very hands-on and very, very different than a lot of the companies. They get excited. They're like, oh, wow, and if I say you need to take accountability, but I'm going to also take accountability, it seems to be fairly universal. Nobody's like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great.
So they're both into it. They're both into it together. It's a partnership.
It is, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that's what people want. If you go to just our basic human needs, people want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Exactly.
He's still floating around, isn't he?
He is still floating around. For sure.
But it's changed. It's different. It's different now.
It's different. And safety's different. Safety's different now. It's not like I'm going to get, chased by a bear. It's I want to feel safe with how I'm feeling or what I need. Yeah,
that's interesting. I would think back in the turn of the century, when he came up with this idea, that it was maybe a safety of location of your job, that I'm not going to be sucked in by some machinery or something.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
this time
pretty
it's
safe now, and you're not. Yeah, you're pretty
and,
safe in your job now.
yeah.
In most cases, right?
Right. Yes.
Now it's more of safety of, okay, am I going to be emotionally supported?
Yeah, that's interesting how that's interpreted today. In your workplace, what visually would somebody see aside from the cubes on people's desks? What would they visually see to determine that this is a culturally different atmosphere? Is there anything, how like Google has their foosballs, et cetera? Is there anything that would be visually different if I were to come and take a walk through?
Well, we're a consulting company, so we're mainly at our client sites. So that's why I had to give them something mobile like the cube.
I see.
But we do give our cubes to our clients, and we have had multiple clients ask for more cubes to give out to their employees. So
That's
so
great.
it's different, and that's also a challenge when you have such a remote workforce and they're at different places too. So, having a strong culture is extremely important for our success.
Yeah, to keep that connection going no matter where they are, so they don't have to have necessarily the visual reinforcement. It's ingrained.
Exactly.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow, that sounds great. Got any job openings? I'm only kidding. Sounds like a great place to work. Okay, let me ask you this next question here. Gosh, you have so much going on in your life. You've already mentioned a little bit the children, aging parents, aging grandparents, the yoga, the conferences, the business, So how does someone, manage to have time for all of these things, your family, a successful career, volunteering and all, and still feel good and not overwhelmed? I mean, do you feel ever at the end of the day spent or overwhelmed or regretful or anything? Or do you feel at peace at the end of each day and as you wake? I mean, how do you achieve that?
So I believe that, on that emotional spectrum, I definitely allow myself to feel all the different emotions. And yes, some days I do feel spent. But I think the secret for me is that how do I pivot back to being at peace and being at calm and not, spending a lot of time. And for me, it is taking time for myself each day, quiet time, whether I'm journaling or I'm working on affirmations or my yoga practice or my meditation practice. But each day I am taking that time for myself. And I might have to back into that. I might have to get up at 4:30 to have that time. But if I don't, if I just wake up and I'm going straight into my day without that time for myself, those are the days where I don't feel good at the end of the day. And if I don't feel good at the end of the day, then maybe I need to take the time for myself at the end of the day. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's really taking that time. And I know I mentioned it earlier. People say that they're so busy. And I'm busy for sure. But I also feel very balanced. And for me, I like to have the different areas. And the owner of Actualize is actually my brother.
Oh.
He's very supportive because what he says is that, the more that you focus on your creative side, the better. All that feeds right back into Actualize, and you have these great ideas and you keep things fresh within our organization. So, I have been able to balance the two because I've chosen to show up in my life no matter where I am at in this more balanced state. And if there is conflict or there are challenges, how do I resolve them very quickly? 10 years ago, I felt way more busy and way more stressed out than I do now. And I wasn't even that busy, like I was, do you know what I mean? So
I
it's
know
like,
what you mean.
I have more space now.
That's
because of
interesting.
I'm not spinning, I'm not staying upset as long. I have the tools to get back to that balanced spot.
Where did you find these tools?
Well, I first started when I went for my um, first yoga certification, the first piece of it. Um, that's when I started just reading and really just taking a journey inward and healing a lot of the pieces that weren't so good with me. And then I've just simplified it. I don't think it's overly complex. I think people feel overwhelmed. And that's why I broke it down into those principles too of are you breathing? Are you moving? How are you communicating? How are you dealing with those challenges? Are you taking time for yourself each day? Are you nourishing your body? And I really have found that as long as I'm focusing on each one of those areas every day, I'm doing great. If, maybe one day I just eat ice cream all day, then I probably don't feel that good, but that's okay. I allow myself to do that. And then I begin again the next day. So I allow myself to fall off the wagon and then I get back on.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult thing to do. It's Dr. Phil once said, if you're on a diet and you open up a bag of chips and you take that one chip and you go, oh, well, I just blew it. So then you just eat the whole bag. It calls it the wood chipper foods. You just keep shoveling it in. And it's true. What you just said, you said, okay, so I spent a day eating ice cream. I guess I needed to do that, but that doesn't mean I have given up.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as I said earlier, it is allowing yourself not to be perfect. And one of the affirmations that I use is, I'm perfect as I am today.
I am perfect as I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a hard.
That's okay.
That's hard. Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking about that. I'm saying it. I'm going, boy, it's easy to say, but it's you really have to pause and think about what that means to yourself. Yeah. Because I know for myself, I've always said I was a type A person, which basically means I'm very driven. And I used to think that was a good thing. But as I get older, I realize that's not a good thing. So how does one, and I'm not really talking about myself because I'm sure there's a lot of people who hear this and they go, wow, this sounds great. Why wouldn't I want this in my life? And yeah, it's going to be kind of scary because you have to address some things about yourself, about the way you handle things. And it's not easy to just let go of habits and self-made traditions and assumptions and expectations. It's not easy at all to let go of those things. And like you just said, talking to you, it sounds like you grew up this way. And you said that you didn't. You said it's been a 10-year journey, it sounds like, of really committing to this self-awareness and learning style, and how wonderful it is that your children get to reap those benefits at such an early age. I would love to interview you in 10 years again, if I'm still here, and and just find out how your children are. How did this set up their future? Where did their direction of their future go? But I guess what I'm asking here is, how does someone who is so rooted in quite the opposite things that you were 10 years ago, if they don't have the impetus to pick up a book about yoga, or they're not into, how do they begin to work through that? Do they go to someone like you, to help them and coach them? You mentioned something about coaching earlier. Is this something that you help people do, or do you have, some other recommendation where they could kind of start this journey? Because it has to be a mindful journey. It's not,
It does.
It's not just, oh, I'd like to feel better. Well, let me think about what Kerry said. Okay, I thought about it. Now let me get back to what I'm
Now I'm just
doing.
going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not
So,
that easy. And I'm going to give you my basic consulting answer. It depends. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm like, oh, it depends. Oh gosh. But no, it does. It does. It depends on the individual person. And that's why, I think where I grew the fastest is when I put my hand up and I was like, I do not know all the answers and I need some support. And that for me personally, that support was working with people individually because even when I was going through the yoga teacher training, it was in a big group and I wasn't getting that individual attention. And so that's why I started doing coaching is because I'm a really big believer in we need those advocates and we need people to just listen to where we are today. And so I was able to tap into a couple different types of coaches, whether it be more, maybe I needed somebody that was going to focus more on this holistic Kerry. Maybe I also have a coach who was more business focused. And then I have had a coach who was more helping me and how am I showing up in my relationships. So I was able to manifest these different coaches and then I would tap into them as I need them. And I still do to this day. I have this team, I have this network of people that I turn to when I am having a bad day or a bad month that they can help get me back on track. So I guess my advice would be to folks is to seek out some support that feels comfortable to you as an individual because there's not one size fits all. And that's one of my biggest peeves is when you see these programs are oh, you're going to change your life. And no, because, maybe you're going down this path and it's working really well, but then maybe you have a loved one pass away and then you need something different for the next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole village of people to hold you accountable.
Yes. And I think that's if you can raise your hand and ask for support. And the first thing is, admitting that you need help, and then the right people will come to you.
Ah, that is a challenge in itself, isn't it? For most of us, is to admit that we need the help. It's that feeling of vulnerability.
Yes.
One of the things in my career that I do is I teach acting, and I tell and when I'm with an acting class and of young folk, college students, and I say, what do you think is the hardest thing about acting? And they'll all raise their hand and say, memorizing lines. And I say, you know what? That's the easiest part about acting is learning lines. The hardest part is being vulnerable. And they all get real quiet. And they're like, can I drop this class?
Yeah, that would be me. I'm like, I don't want to be.
Where's drop at? When's the last day? And so because just the word vulnerable kind of makes you scared, It does. But
it's a scary word.
It is a scary word, but it's the most powerful word as well. It's kind of like an oxymoron in itself, It's scary but powerful when you allow yourself to be vulnerable. And I always tell them, if the actors that you love to watch in movies or on stage are the ones that show you their vulnerability, and those are the ones you trust. Those are the ones you're drawn to because they've taken you in to something personal, right. And it can be very strong. And now you have a responsibility to treat that well. Say, once I've been vulnerable with you, you have now sort of accepted a different role. Gives you responsibility too. So it's not just that I'm being here all week or something, but your help, your strength has to come in there as well. Yeah, that's fascinating. This is really fascinating. Yeah. And it stemmed from the yoga. Would you say this started with the yoga?
It did. And the reason it started with the yoga is because, like type A personality and go, 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 go. And it made me be still. It made me, I had to be on my mat, do the poses. And that's what they talk about, right? You're doing these poses, and I basically had to wear my body out to relax myself. And I still run, but I was a runner. And that was very, meditative for me in a sense. And I still love to, get out and walk or run as a part of my movement. But the yoga was, because it's a series of poses, you're going through these poses, and it opens up things in your body. And then at the end, you're taking, this quiet time. And in that quiet time is when I started saying, oh man, you gotta fix yourself, man. You are not you act like you're happy and you act like everything's, perfect, but it's not. And I wasn't happy. Right. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you've known me for a long time, I mean, I was pretty happy, but I'm a much better place right now because I'm more myself. I joke, I say I'm a recovering people pleaser because I was doing what people wanted me to do, and then I'm like, one day you wake up and wait a minute, this is exactly what I want to be doing right now.
Yeah.
And so it's being courageous enough to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to take a step back and these are the things that I want to focus on. And what I've found is the more honest I am, the better my life is, the better my relationships are too.
Because you're not lying anymore about the expectations.
Yeah, I'm not a fraud, right?
Yeah, you're not lying, and the expectations are there, and take it or leave it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm also very open and honest that, I'm not perfect and I do have bad days or, bad months or, maybe I do put on 10 pounds, but, it's okay. I have to, get out my toolbox and see what I need and work on it.
Yeah.
But I'm committed to it, as you said earlier, but I'm committed to that and to being my best self.
Yeah, we do have someone who has typed in a question here.
Sure.
One of our listeners. So let's see. This is Nick from Phoenix, and he wants to know something. He said that how does a parent deal with the fear of doing something for their children that will not turn out well in terms of education, says manners, the whole growing up process. It's a big question, but basically, how does a parent deal with the fear of doing something for their children that may not, it sounds like go in the direction that they initially intended and it does not turn out well for them? How do they deal with that?
And fear is definitely that's a tough emotion, for sure. And I'm gonna go with an analogy. So we're just talking about acting, but I use this a lot with people. Life is like a play, right? And so each person, each situation that shows up is like a scene, and each one of those things that shows up is a lesson that we can learn from. So if parents looked at it more from the sense of you can't shield your kids from everything. My son at the beginning of the year, he came home and he wasn't happy with his teacher. And, I have a lot of friends who would have got him out of that class, would have got their kid out of the class. And I told my son, I said, listen, you're going to have to deal with people like this in the world. And it's up to you to make nice with her. And now he loves her and she loves him. But if I would have pulled him out, I wouldn't have been teaching him that lesson that was in front of him. So I think many times we try to shield our kids versus letting them learn what they need to learn from that person or that situation.
I think Finding Nemo, that was the root of that. Mm-hmm. When the father professed to Dory that he didn't want anything happen to his son, and she turned around and says, well, why would you want that?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure we don't want our children to be swept away to Australia. But
yeah, that's a little intense.
That was a little intense. Yeah, that's not what they meant. Well, tell us what's happening for you in the future. What can we expect from you in the future?
So I'm working on a book called Culture Infusion, and it's about how I've incorporated everything in my personal life, in a corporate setting, and really some stories about what's been going on behind the scenes at Actualize. So that's what's in the near future.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Very exciting stuff. Good stuff. This is really good stuff. I really feel like our listeners today are going to pause and think about where they are in their lives, emotionally, intellectually, all of that, and see where, is this a time for pivoting? Do we need to pivot today? We may be having a lot of pivoting today after this talk and looking for those cubes around the house. And again, if they want some of these cubes, which I think are great, they can just go to your website, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And give us that website address.
It's zendoway.com, and that is ZENDOWAY.com.
There you go. There you go. Zendoway.com. Get your cubes and start pivoting and start getting your life on the road of holistic feeling, of well-being, because well-being isn't always, quote, happiness. Sometimes
that's right.
It's just being. It's just being in a great neutral state. Yeah. Whew. I could use I'm thinking I'm going to go get some ice cream now. I'm just Well, thank you again for joining us today, Kerry. It's been a delight.
Thank you so much for having me. I definitely appreciate it.
And you have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.